Hello, and thanks for tuning in. Fall means different things to a lot of us, but most of us can agree that curling up with a good book is a favorite fall activity. For over a decade, each November, the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula hosts a huge book sale to raise funding for all the important educational programs and ways that the museum connects our community. But this year, the book sale, like many events, is different. So in the spirit of pivoting and playing the hand we've got, your museum team has decided to bring the books to you virtually with an online book sale. And to make it fun for all of us missing the sale, we will be reading you some of our favorite finds from the book sale and beyond. Kick back, enjoy, and to support the cause, head on over to fortmissoulamuseum.org to support history by buying books. And now I'll start reading. The Underground Railroad is an exciting and suspenseful novel written in 2016 by the Nobel Prize author Colson Whitehead. I am captivated by this story, and I want to share it with my fellow book lovers. The protagonist in this novel is Cora, a 16 or 17-year-old girl, she doesn't know her age for sure, who is a slave on a Georgia plantation in the early 1880s. Cora has done the seemingly, she has run away, hotly pursued by the driven slave catcher, Ridgway. Crossing the state line was a capital offense in Georgia, and the slave catcher shared rumors with other plantation owners that a new branch of the Underground Railroad was said to be operating in the southern part of the state, as impossible as that sounded. Cora's dangerous and desperate journey toward the quote-unquote North and freedom leads her through unfamiliar country and unimaginable conflicts. She puts her trust in the Underground Railway, but in North Carolina, she can go no further. The railway is blocked by a cave-in, cutting off the tunnel. Alone and frightened, she suddenly hears a man's voice in the darkness saying, "What are you doing here?" Martin and Ethel Wells have helped other runaway slaves that passed through on the Underground Railroad, but never for more than a few days at a time. The night riders could appear at any time to search homes, and that meant death and destruction. As I begin reading, Cora has been hidden in a space above the false ceiling of the attic of the Wells home for 4 months. She cannot stand, must stay silent, and comes downstairs in the evening to use the washroom and to eat. Her only diversion is a peeky hole that enables her a one-eyed view of the village park below. And so I'll read. It had been just after dark, and the park was full of those afraid to go home. Cora wondered what waited for them that they lingered so purposefully. The same people, week after week. The fast-talking man who sat on the fountain's rim, dragging his fingers through his wispy hair. The slovenly, wide-hipped lady who always wore a black bonnet and muttered to herself. They weren't here to drink the night air or sneak a kiss. These people slumped on their distracted circuits, looking this way and that, never in front. As if to avoid the eyes of all the ghosts, the dead ones who had built their town. Colored labor had erected every house on the park, laid the stones in the fountain and the paving of the walkways, hammered the stage where the night riders performed their grotesque pageants, and the wheeled platform that delivered the doomed men and women to the air. The only thing colored folks hadn't built was the tree. God made that for the town to bend to evil ends. No wonder the whites wandered the park in the growing darkness, Cora thought, her forehead pressed into the wood. They were ghosts themselves, Caught between two worlds, the reality of their crimes and the hereafter denied them for those crimes. Cora was informed of the night riders' rounds by the ripple passing through the park. The evening crowd turned to gawk at a house on the opposite side. A young girl in pigtails led a trio of the night riders inside her home. Cora remembered the girl's father had trouble with the porch steps. She hadn't seen him for weeks. The girl clutched her robe to her neck and closed the door behind them. Two night riders, tall and densely proportioned, idled on the porch smoking their pipes with complacent sloth. The door opened half an hour later, and the team huddled on the sidewalk in a lantern circle, consulting a ledger. They crossed the park, eventually stepping beyond the spy hole's domain. Cora had closed her eyes when their loud rapping on the front door shocked her. They stood directly beneath. The next minutes moved with appalling slowness. Cora huddled in a corner, making herself small behind the final rafter. Sounds furnished details of the action below. Ethel greeted the night riders warmly, and anyone who knew her would be certain she was hiding something. Martin made a quick tour of the attic to make sure nothing was amiss, and then joined everyone downstairs. Martin and Ethel answered their questions quickly as they showed the group around. It was just the two of them. Their daughter lived elsewhere. The night riders searched the kitchen and the parlor. The maid Fiona had a key, but no one else had access to the house. Up the stairs. They had been visited by no strangers, heard no strange noises, noted nothing out of the ordinary. They searched the two bedrooms. Nothing was missing. There was no cellar. Surely they knew by now that the park houses did not have cellars. Martin had been in the attic that very afternoon, and nothing was amiss. "Do you mind if we go up?" The voice was gruff and low. Cora assigned it to the shorter night rider, the one with the beard. Their footfalls were loud on the attic stairs. They navigated around the junk. One of them spoke, startling Cora. His head was inches below her. She kept her breath close. The men were sharks, moving their snouts beneath the ship, looking for the food they sensed was close. Only thin planks separated hunter and prey. "We don't go up here that much since the raccoons made a nest." "You can smell the mess," the other night rider said. The regulators departed. Martin skipped his midnight rounds in the attic, scared that they were in the teeth of an elaborate trap. Cora, in her comfortable darkness, patted the sturdy wall. It had kept her safe. Home searchers were on the rise. They'd been so successful rounding up people that now they have to work hard to meet their quotas, Martin said. Cora offered that perhaps it was good the house had been searched. It would be some time before they returned. More time for the railroad to reach out, or for another opportunity to present itself. Martin always fidgeted when Cora raised the idea of initiative. He cradled one of his childhood toys in his hands, a wooden duck. He'd worried the paint from it these past months. "Or it means the roads will be twice as hard to pass," he said. Cora had been feeling poorly all day. She said goodnight and climbed into her nook. For all the close calls, she was in the same place she'd been in for months, becalmed, between departure and arrival, in transit like the passenger she'd been ever since she ran. Once the wind picked up, she'd be moving again, but for now, there was only the blank and endless sea. What a world it is, Cora thought, that makes a living prison into your only haven. Was she out of bondage or in its web? How to describe the status of a runaway? Freedom was a thing that shifted as you looked at it, the way a forest is dense with trees up close, But from outside, from the empty meadow, you see its true limits. Being free has nothing to do with chains or how much space you had. On the plantation, she was not free, but she moved unrestricted on its acres, tasting the air, tracing the summer stars. The place was big in its smallness. Here she was free of her master, but slunk around a warren so tiny she couldn't stand. Cora hadn't left the top floors of the house in months, but her perspective roved widely. North Carolina had its Justice Hill and she had hers. Looking down over the universe of the park, she saw the town drift where it wanted, washed by sunlight on a stone bench, cooled in the shadows of the hanging tree. But they were prisoners like she was, shackled to fear. Martin and Ethel were terrified of the watchful eye behind every darkened window. The town huddled together on Friday nights in the hope their numbers warded off the things in the dark. The rising black tribe, the enemy who concocts accusations, the child who undertakes a magnificent revenge for a scolding and brings the house down around them. Better to hide in attics than to confront what lurked behind the faces of neighbors, friends, and family. The end. Thank you for spending time with me and for being part of the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula's first ever virtual book sale. I'm excited about the book that I read to you, the part of it anyway. And the good news for you is this book that I read is for sale, and all the proceeds support keeping Missoula County's history alive. Check it out at fortmissoulamuseum.org/virtual book sale. If you enjoyed this book and are inspired to find a new favorite book for you or your family or friends this holiday season or before, check out one of the literary treasures to be found online at fortmissoulamuseum.org/virtual book sale. Reading a book gives us some place to go when we have to stay home. So support history. Buy a book.